அனைவருக்கும் என்னுடைய அன்பான காலை வணக்கம். To our wonderful friends who have come all the way from Kerala, I say my respects and namaskaram to you all. In this very beautiful morning, all of us have gathered together, looking at the galaxy of speakers, the Rotary annual conference blossom. You are able to bring, I'm 100% sure, throughout the day you will have a lot of opportunity for intellectual stimulation. And we all know people in Rotary. You are all men of character, men of distinction, who wants to leave the world a better place than how you have inherited. Being a Rotarian, based on the test of truth that has made all of you to evolve into men of character, I believe this is a very, very important trait, because Rotary as an institution over the last many, many years, it has served the world. It has created fantastic leaders and individuals. People who are absolutely distinctive in their own field. Could be a doctor, could be a lawyer, could be a businessman. And after joining into Rotary, going through the process of discovering your leadership and also getting to serve whenever you get the opportunity, the tenure, and your weekly meetings, I'm very sure it has created thousands of wonderful leaders in the world. They all have made sure the world is a better place. I always had the unique privilege of attending Rotary functions when I was in the police field. And some Rotary organizations also given me a honorary membership so that I attend their weekly meetings in the coastal part of Karnataka. I always cherish those memories, the friendship that I made, that continues to be a lifelong friendship even now. And I also had the opportunity to see where governments cannot reach. I'd personally seen Rotary can reach, especially the last mile problem. The last mile problem is a big problem for the governments, and Rotary always efficiently does it. So I take this opportunity to greet and wish all the eminent Rotarians who have assembled here for this great morning, and also for a stimulating intellectual discussion throughout the day. I take this opportunity to pay my respects to the conference chair, Ramesh Veeraraghavan Ayya Avargal, and his better half for putting up this program together with close to 4,900 confirmed registration participants of Rotary District 3201. I also take this opportunity to pay my respects and compliments to the District Governor, Rotarian AKS Advocate N. Sundaravadivel Ayya, and his better half for being the Governor and leading Rotary, the particular area under his responsibility, to glorious heights. I take the opportunity to pay my respects to the very indomitable Ravi Murugayya Avargal, Mannin Maindan, who is going to get an award today, and who has passionately, I know him for the last many years, who has passionately put his whole money, personal money, to create a song, a video song that is shot across India to inculcate the spirit of Bharatiya among all of us. And Dr. Krishnan Swaminathan, a very eminent doctor from UK, I know him for a long time now, who left everything, came back to Coimbatore, started the Idayangal Charitable Trust with a vigorousness that is not commonly seen among human beings. He dedicated his life completely to eliminating type 1 diabetes among children. And right now, his mission, he works on a mission mode. So I'm very happy that you have recognized him, you have called him for this meeting. I pay my respects to PVC Paramveer Chakra awardee Yogesh Singh Yadav Ayya Avargal, and also stand with all of you in praying for the well-being of his son. I am sure the Almighty will make sure he will recover fast in a matter of time. So today the topic that you have given to me is India and geopolitics. I am not very sure whether morning is a good time to talk about geopolitics. That to the opening of the Rotary conference is a good time to talk about geopolitics. It only shows how geopolitics has become a very fascinating topic for all of us to understand where we are currently among the global community of nations and where we want to go in the next many years. I think it's a fascinating topic to talk. I'm equally sure that all of you would be delighted to join me to have a discussion about my reading of the world and where I think India would be in the next 25 years. Of course, I'm not going to talk politics here because this is not a political forum. And I respect the views and sentiments of all the friends who have gathered here, who might have different ideological underpinnings to their life and the way they make their electoral choice. If I am able to bracket geopolitics into three divisions, it is the gold, which determined for a long time how the world is governed. Then the American dollars, which is determining even now how the world is shaping up. Probably the next 20 years, it is going to be the chips and the silicon wafers that is going to determine how the world is going to shape up and rearrange itself. The dollar was a very important exchange value for a long, long time. It will continue to be for a long time. 58% of the world's reserve is held in dollars. Last month, the SWIFT payment, where the international banking transaction is done, 49.1% of the transaction across the international settlement happened in dollar. So dollar did not reach here by simply printing a dollar and they reached here, where 58% of the world trade reserve is held in dollars. Americans were able to reach here by a series of strategic maneuvering over the last 100 years that has primarily made US as an indomitable superpower, that has made almost all the nations to depend on US. Our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to US in the last 2 days, many of us were curiously watching Mr. Trump's statement and Mr. Modi's statement, what they were talking, and possibly how Indo-US relationship will shape up in the short period over the next 4 to 5 years. 1870 to 1920 was the first phase where the American dollars, the gold played a part. 1911, 1920, 1925, just before the American Depression, 1933, the US had a very fair share. They said 1 ounce, which is 28 grams of gold, is pegged to a dollar, which is 20.67, which is $20.67. If you take 28 ounces of gold, that is gold reserve. And any dollar you print, 40% of its value should be held in gold. So we all believed, okay, US as a global country has got a marking of $1 to a gold. 1933, when the Great Recession in America started till 1939-40, Americans suspended the gold measure of value to $1. Even then the world waited. 1944, when 44 countries gathered in New Hampshire in a place called Bretton Woods, they created the international system of a monetary fund. They created the World Bank, in which the primary currency itself is dollar, because dollar is pegged to gold. So all of us never had a problem. We thought, okay, this is the world currency now. There is an IMF, there is a World Bank which is created in 1944, and dollar will be the underpinning value. And India, especially Coimbatore, has got a pride of place, because in 1944, pre-independence from our country, we sent 5 people to that conference, agreeing that India will also be a part. 3 Englishmen and 2 Indians. And 1 Indian happened to be a guy from Coimbatore, Shanmugam Shetty Ayya, who happened to be our first finance minister, also was part of the Bretton Woods conference. So no problem, it went on and on and on. Till 1971, when the system collapsed. Sorry, I'm taking 10 minutes to set a base to understand how geopolitics was for the last 100 years, so that we can make some assumption. 28 gram of gold is equivalent to $20.67. So all of us had a very fair belief that dollar as a currency is there because it is backed up by gold. 1971, when the model completely collapsed, when the US said that dollar as a currency is there because it is backed up by gold. 1971, when the model completely collapsed, when the US said no more gold reserved to dollar, suddenly we didn't know what to do. Because by the time from dollar, we were slowly shifting towards petroleum, the newfound reserves. Middle East countries have found oil wealth in abundance, and they were exporting petrol. A lot of countries were importing petrol, and everybody wanted dollars, everybody wanted to print dollars. So Americans started recklessly printing dollars. They were printing dollars just like water. The American Federal Reserve became the preeminent global body in the world. Covai, Saudi Arabia, all the big countries like Russia at that point of time, the OPEC nations, it was holding all its petrol either by selling, getting dollars, or by buying petrol by buying dollars. So dollar became so powerful. Americans determined the geopolitics of the world by using dollar as a medium. For example, Saudi Arabia, when Mr. Trump took over now, he said, somebody asked him, which is the first country you want to go to the world as the US president? Normally, if it is in India, if it is Sri Lanka, we all have a certain pattern. We go to our friendly neighbor. We go to our country that is very closest allied to us. Do you know what did Trump say? Trump said, last time when he took over, Saudi Arabia agreed to purchase $450 billion worth of US goods. So I went to Saudi Arabia as my first country. If Saudi Arabia agrees to buy $500 billion worth of US goods, I will go to Saudi now. Immediately, promptly, the Saudi king called Mr. Trump and said, Trump, don't worry. We are going to invest $600 billion in the US. So that is how dollar as a powerful medium, it shapes not only geopolitics, it also shapes how different countries deal with other countries in the world. So Mr. Trump's first foreign visit as American president is determined by which country is going to invest or buy American products at the American dollar value. So into this geopolitics, India as a country, we are observing, we are carefully watching, we are navigating how Bharat should be positioned in the next 25 years. It did not stop there. Right from 1971, all the countries which had a lot of petroleum, once you export petroleum out, you get dollars. So that dollars, you got to invest in other parts of the world. For example, we all know Daimler Chrysler, Benz car. Many of you own a Daimler Chrysler, Mercedes-Benz. We all know it's a German company. But how many of you know the number one shareholder of the Daimler Chrysler, the Benz company, is the Kuwait Investment Corporation, which owns 9.7% of the Daimler Chrysler Corporation, because the money Kuwait is earning by selling petroleum, by getting that money, it has to invest in properties across the world. So though it could be a German company, but the petrol that is sold by a Middle East nation, that is traded in dollars, will decide in which country I am going to buy which company. We all know the Norwegian sovereign fund. Norway population is 55 lakh. So 5.5 million. I think it is smaller than your Rotary district. If I take 3201, if I take the population within the Rotary district 3201, I think the population will be more than 55 lakhs, sir. Because multiple districts. So Norway's population as a country is less than the Rotary district 3201. But the wealth fund they hold is $1.8 trillion is Norway's sovereign wealth fund. For example, India, we are holding $690 billion as foreign exchange reserve. Norway is holding $1.8 trillion. Why? Because Norway was able to find petrol in North Sea. The politicians were very intelligent. They said, we are a small country, Scandinavian country. Half the time we are in snow and cold. We need to generate revenue, keep this revenue safe for the next 20 generations. We don't have any right to spend this money now. Very carefully, each of the petroleum barrel they were selling from the North Sea, very carefully they started accumulating. Today it's worth 1.8 trillion. Now you might ask me, what is $1.8 trillion worth? Norway has invested in 70 countries in 6,500 properties. They've invested in companies, they've invested in the global supply chain, they've invested in the manufacturing of big companies, they've invested in rental properties in London and New York. That money which they generate from their investment in 70 countries, it goes back into Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund. That gives 20% of Norway's budget. That is why Norway happens to be one of the richest countries in the world. We have to understand the geopolitics. How dollar as a medium, how petrol as a commodity, when they both combine together, it determines the world politics and geopolitics, not only for the last many years, but also for the next few decades as well. If I go one step further, Americans are very clever. You have my dollar, your assets are held in my dollar, your SWIFT transactions are done in my dollar, you better buy my products back into your country. That is why Iran and US is fighting now. But once they were so close allies, Americans used to, when Iran sell their oil out, Americans used to sell their fighter planes to Iran. Americans used to sell their fighter planes to Saudi. So America used to benefit in multiple ways because dollar is the world's currency. Oil is flowing out. People are generating so much money that is again capped in dollar. So I have my defense company. All the big companies in US, I have to sell fighter jets, I have to sell missiles. So better you buy my product because you are holding this in dollar. How do you break this? Till anybody thinks of breaking this, America is going to be the superpower of the world for many years to come. That is why Mr. Trump, immediately after he took over, he said two things day one. He said, anybody who has put a tariff on American product that is entering into US soil, I am going to put a counter tariff for your product entering into my soil. He said, number one. This affects all countries. Straight away he said, Canada, Mexico, all my neighbors, I am going to put 25% tariff. For China, he has already put 10% tariff. Countries like India, he said, I am going to put tariff on you because my Harley Davidson motorbike is costly. My America Bourbon is costly. My California wine is costly in India. I am going to put tariff on it. Just imagine. Second, he said, if anybody thinks about creating a parallel global currency, I am going to levy 100% tariff on those countries. So you all know the story is the Brazilian president, Mr. Lula. This year they are the BRICS country. He said a few months back that BRICS country together, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, together all five of us, we will create a BRICS currency. Just imagine China in one side, India in one side, Brazil in one side, Latin American power. All five of us will create a BRICS currency that will also be dealt along with dollars. Immediately Trump said, if any one of you thinking about creating a currency, even within the BRICS, because we contribute more to global trade as an organization, even within you, all BRICS country, I will put 100% levy. And he put it in his Truth Social. If anybody thinks about alternate to dollar, you should say hello to tariff, goodbye to dollars. He said it in his Truth Social. Now you have to understand the context. Where the gold reserve came in, the Bretton Woods conference in 1944, how carefully America as a nation, they made sure dollar became the preeminent global currency. Then came the case of oil boom in 1960s, 70s and 80s. Then came the American global superpower, the defense industry dominating. Then came the era after the subsequent partial collapse of WTO, the regional groupings trying to assert that might. This is the base I want to set before this August gathering before I make my further comments. So in this era, India is operating. In this era, a powerful country like India, that is the 5th largest global economy in the world, worth about $4 trillion, we got to position our country in the next 25 years to emerge in the top 2. This complication, trade war, turf war, tariff war, in this complication where dollar is the preeminent currency, in this complication where China is emerging in a big way, in this complication where the neighbors around Bharat, Pakistan, we have a problem. Bangladesh, there was a regime change recently. Maldives, we had a problem. Sri Lanka, there is a government change. If you look at all the neighbors of our country, we got to very carefully deal with them and make sure they are with us as friendly neighbors. You got to carefully deal with them. That is another problem. Then we have the global trade war that has started. Be it the South China Sea, where the global shipping line is becoming a problem. Be it the region around the Suez Canal, it's a problem. Because 58% of the global shipping is right now being affected by the Houthi rebels who want to shoot at any cargo terminal that is passing through that area. You got to carefully calibrate that. Then you have the biggest opportunity and problem, both in Africa, which holds critical minerals for the world's next phase of growth. Whatever the world is trying to do, we are entering into a phase of critical minerals that is going to decide how gold was, how dollars was. The critical minerals will decide the next 40 years where the world is going to go. And you all know for a fact, 70% of the world's critical minerals are controlled by China. Be it germanium, be it lithium. If you take all the top minerals, which is used for making chip, right from tungsten, China controls 70%. America is second country in the world which controls roughly about 20%. The rest of us, we are controlling 10%, all the countries in the world. So you got to carefully position yourself where you want to go. Now in this, any guy or as any person you are in India, geopolitics will affect you personally. As a businessman, it will affect you. As a voting choice, it will affect you. Because next 50 years, we got to carefully position our country in the next 10 years so that we play a role in the next 50 years. Because I am taking America one side, China one side, and India one side. I am going to compare the last 70, 90 stock market collapse. Again in US, I am talking. From 2000 onwards, we are looking at a continuous boom of US for 24 years till now. Which means US has faced trouble, revolution, change of governments in Latin America, creation of euro as a currency in 2000, European economic community coming together so that euro nation gets formed. US has survived every single thing. US has survived every single thing and still it continues to be the global superpower even after this many years. Look at China. Again, if you look at China, such a great, culturally significant nation, which the Mings and all the dynasties, at that point of time, very important country in the world. When Angus Madison says, around 1700, when 25% of the global GDP was dominated by India, and we also have to remember 30% of global GDP was dominated by China in 1700. Such a big country, culturally such a rich country, because they believe they operate between heaven and earth. China as a country, culturally they believe they are below heaven and above earth. That's how Chinese civilization is. Now China is reasserting now. Napoleon Bonaparte once said, don't wake up China. China should always sleep. If China wakes up, it's a danger to the world. Because such a big civilization dominating the world, 1500 odd years, sleeping peacefully for 200 years. Mao Zedong came, fight between National Party and the Communist Party, 50s, great leap forward of Mao, cultural revolution, 1960s, importance given to industrial base, again a failed model, Deng Xiaoping coming in, bringing in reforms, then came the special economic zones of 1980-85. Then we have seen the growth of China that is unrivaled in global human history. Not even Roman civilization in their biggest years have done what China has done in the last 40 years. Continuous sustained growth, lifting millions of people out of poverty. A country that was essentially rich poor after 1900 has come to occupy the second largest economy in the world. If US is at 34 trillion, China is at 17 trillion, we are at 4 trillion. If you look at China now, a global superpower, what Trump is essentially doing right now is delaying America's decline by a few decades. That is what he's doing. China is all set. They are having 70% of the world's critical minerals. They have entered chip. The recent deep-sea R1 you must have seen. Now, China is our neighbor. I can take a mic, sit here and say, oh, China is great. I can take a mic and say US is great. But you cannot have your neighbor who shares your boundary with you, who cannot build a bigger house than you. Wherever we live, our fight is always with the neighbor. You got a Maruti, okay, I will get a Baleno. You got a Baleno, I will get a 7-seater. So you got a 7-seater, I'll go for a German car. You got a German car, I'll get a Tesla. So now it is BYD. So the fight is always, because we are always measured with our neighbors. So you build a 5-bedroom house, let me build a 7-bedroom with 3 floors. So whatever we say, China happens to be a neighbor. You cannot afford to have a powerful neighbor that is rising. Yesterday, Mr. Trump said, it's insane. America as a country, we are investing $900 billion in defense. Insane, he says. Why should America, we invest $900 billion in defense every year? Now, you should also carefully see what Trump said. He said, China is investing $450 billion in defense. $450 billion, our neighbor who shares a boundary with us, $450 billion every year China is putting. Advanced 5th generation aircraft. China is able to rival both Boeing and Airbus by building commercial act to United Nations, a country which was borrowing a plane for its premier to fly to United Nations, New York Assembly in 50s, early part of 50s, that country is able to build a passenger jet that is able to rival the Boeings and Airbus of the world. You have to understand in what context India's geopolitics is there, because your neighbors are becoming powerful. Then you have the China's Belt and Road, the Boeings and Airbus of the world. You have to understand in what context India's geopolitics is there, because your neighbors are becoming powerful. Then you have the China's Belt and Road Initiative. They're able to imagine something. They want to link China, they want to link Tibet, they want to link the Chinese occupied Kashmir, then they want to enter touching Afghanistan into Pakistan, then they want to come all the way to Balochistan, then they have to go to Iran. So the Belt and Road, then they want to come all the way to Balochistan, then they have to go to Iran. So the Belt and Road Initiative, China's dream, the Grand Karakoram Highway, 6-lane, 12-lane highway with all industrial belt connecting China to the Middle East. Now Modi ji said, okay, fine. If that is your problem, we are going to create India Middle East Economic Corridor. We will start from India. We will enter Middle East. We will get all the regional powers of that to us. And then our economic corridor will enter Europe. So it is always a chessboard game. When they make a move, you got to make a move. Or you got to make a move quicker than their move. If 10 years we are like folding our hand and waiting and watching what is happening, they will be 6, 7, 8 moves ahead. I compared China, I compared US. I intentionally comparing India now. 1940s what we were doing, we were under occupation. 1950 what we were doing, we were thinking whether planning commission model is right, whether the Russian model is right, whether the planning commission can help us. 1960 what we were doing politics of poverty. 1970 democracy problem. Just imagine was asked to Mr.